Welcome to The Leadership Mindset, the podcast where we uncover the hidden gems of sales and business leadership. Our goal is to bring you up close and personal with the world's most accomplished business leaders. We explore their experiences, motivations, inspirations, and the challenges they've conquered on their way to the top. In today's episode, you can expect to learn how to transform their leadership approach by adopting a coaching mindset that prioritizes personal connection, empathy, and support with today's guest, Keith Rosen.
Keith, welcome back.
Pleasure to be here, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Not at all. It's a while since we spoke. It's maybe 2-3 years. Tell me a little bit of what you've been doing since, because at the time I think we were all in lockdown, or at least everybody was working from home, and that landscape's changed a little bit.
Yes, it certainly has. It certainly has. Other than building a house, which was always fun during the pandemic, I've been spending a lot of time helping companies transition to this new hybrid workplace. And even today, they're still struggling. I find from pre-COVID to now, where companies and managers especially struggle just coaching their people even face-to-face. Now it's exponentially more difficult when they have not even been trained how to coach, let alone coach remotely. And then we wonder why there's the highest level of employee disengagement ever, as well as attrition, both on the client side as well as our employee side. So
I'm fascinated by this because I'm curious to know how much of that disengagement is the employees in terms of generational changes, and then also the coaching or lack thereof.
That brings up a point that's spot on in terms of really the definition of coaching that I know you and I certainly agree with, which part of it is tapping into people's individuality. And if the leader, especially now when we're trying to develop relationships on a one-dimensional screen, if you don't know how to engage with people and uncover what truly drives them personally, what their core motivators are, their priorities, their core values, coaching is going to fall flat. I saw a statistic the other day where I think maybe 1 out of every 20 managers are actually trained how to coach, forgetting about how to coach remotely. They're even struggling with that. So it's something where, and I hear it all the time from managers, well, Keith, it's really hard to develop relationships, via computer on a screen. It's hard to connect with customers. Well, I do not agree with that. Actually, I think it's the antithesis of that. I think it's the opposite, because right now I'm in your home. You're in my home. You see my guitar, you see that, piece of art in the back, some pictures over here on the side. We could have a great conversation for probably 40 minutes about music and friends and travel and connection, which that's what people want. And we are so still feeling disconnected. The greatest opportunity that I see is to actually reconnect with people on that human level, where if I'm speaking to a customer or a prospect and I'm in their home, well, I'm seeing the dogs running around, the cats running around, they're humans too. They're at their table, they have their t-shirt on. They're just as excited about making new and fostering new relationships as we are. So before, say 3 or 4 years ago when we were speaking, or even 5, where we were so focused on the sales process, which again, of course, is essential. What companies really need to realize is what precedes the sales process is the mindset. And the mindset and the new strategy, which might sound redundant, but it's at such a deeper level of sales and leadership, is care. And putting that care and connection up front, where before, again, selling and having an hour meeting, it's 5 minutes of warm up and, hey, what's going on? And now let's get into the presentation. Now it's 30 minutes of just, hey, what's going on in your world? How are you doing? How is your family? What's been happening in your business? How are people engaging on your end? How are your clients doing? Having that deeper level of personal connection to me, is what's driving more sales and accelerating the growth of people to help them develop really what we all want is a growth mindset, where if we look at the concept of a fixed mindset, and to give you an example, post-pandemic, I saw a statistic where 76% of all companies have changed the way they buy. So procurement, decision makers, factors that influence the buying decision. However, only 17% of companies have changed the way they sell. And to me, that bleeds into how managers are still trying to manage the way they managed 2, 3, 4 years ago. And if we're still trying to do the same thing and achieve the same results we did using the same processes and mindset that we did 3 or 4 years ago, we're already set up for failure. So, and to me, and then we look at these statistics and we see, the level of disengagement is so high. Oh, people are, they're jumping ship so quickly that, this quiet quitting that people say is going on. I'm having a really hard time with underperformers, and it's really hard to help develop people or coach people, remotely. And no, it's like saying, if you tell me, hey, Keith, go dig a hole with a spoon, what am I going to learn? I can't dig a hole. Or is it more about, hey, if I had the right tools, I could do it more efficiently, more effectively, and do it the right way.
Yeah, it's funny you talk about companies the way they sell. I'm not even convinced that most companies know how they sell, because everybody seems to be doing it differently. And I remember, actually, as a company, I would say a Fortune 10 company, big company. And I was working with some of the managers, and they have their own internal sales process. And they shared it with me beforehand, and I broke it up. Let's say there was 7 stages. And I put them out of order. Nobody knew what order they should have gone in. Nobody. And that was their own process. And this is a very successful company. So, when you're working with that, so that leads me then to kind of wonder, and you've been in this game longer than I have in terms of the certainly the coaching side, that's your thing, is and leadership development, is 1 in 20 companies, managers have been trained. Why is I can only assume at some level they don't believe in it. Because if they really believed in it, they'd be doing it. More of it, at least.
As always, we're aligned, and to me, it's just, I don't know any other word to call it than sad. And companies have a responsibility to their shareholders, their stakeholders, to drive revenue. However, we need to put people over profit. And if companies can just embrace that for 1 second and realize if they're investing their time and energy and money into their people, the byproduct is organizational success. And just think about today how I'm hearing more and more department silos have existed for years. Every organization, practically 99% of companies that I've worked in, it doesn't matter how big or small they are, have departmental silos. Now, the question is, why? Most companies will just say, well, that's how it is. Well, you and I both know the definition of coaching is the art of creating new possibility. We're supposed to shatter that and challenge that. That's just how it is, and it's always been that way. Well, what if we can change the model around that? And just to go back to a point you said, and I'd be curious to your opinion. Take 20 salespeople, put them in a room, ask each person separately what the sales process is. Boy, and I, what are we going to hear?
Won't have a clue. They'll tell you how they do it, but they won't be able to tell you why they do it that way.
Here is the model, here, follow it. Now, of course, every salesperson, that I speak with in a company, and I'm working with the managers and they're asking me to coach their team, they either haven't seen the sales process. The sales process is just step 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 with no meat in it, or everyone's just doing their own thing, which again leads back to managers on a good day weren't observing their people. Forget about trying to observe people remotely. And again, it really does go back to my example of connecting with customers on a deeper level. If you're a manager and you're having a conference call with one of your team members or salespeople, and you see that this person clearly looks like they haven't slept in days, They're still wearing a dirty t-shirt from last week. They got, chaos all over, piles of papers everywhere. Are you going to tell me that as a human being, I'm going to say, hey, let's park this, our topic for today. How are you doing? How are you doing? Because I'm noticing that, you're not at your best, which I usually see. Are you open to talking about that? And those are the conversations that companies are not having because they're throwing more technology, more AI. Oh, here's a solution. Let's get ahead of the curve. No. Last time I checked, technology, while wonderful, does not build relationships. People build relationships.
So here's something that I'd like to get your take on. That, because you mentioned it there with the technology, is that the danger is always that conversations like this, it can kind of transition into what's wrong with the managers. Why aren't they right? And that doesn't help anybody. And I'm trying to put myself in that position where you've got 7, 8, 9 people on your team. They're going to be mixed. Even the high producers are giving you trouble because they may be just doing it their way, not adhering to best practice, but nothing happens because they're achieving the results. But at the same time, everybody else is looking at them thinking, well, why do we have to do it when they don't have to do it? So just because you got an A player doesn't mean you don't have issues to deal with. And then, as you said, people more and more. Sorry, I would say more and more issues, but I also think there's maybe less resilience. So it can appear like that your reps, everybody has something going on in their own life. Everybody.
Yeah.
Like before the call, I won't talk about it, but you shared with me something that's going on in yours, right? We all have these things, and therefore every conversation with a rep is tell me about is that they descend into almost hop up here on the couch, right? Help me understand. Now, first of all, is maybe managers don't feel they're trained well enough to have that conversation. Maybe they don't have the empathy, the traits to even notice it, and if they do, the skills to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And also, it can be exhausting because I've got 1,000,001 things to do. I don't have time for this. I'm only projecting here. I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but I'm just trying to create this scenario. And I mean, break it down.
It sounds to me you've been listening to a lot of the conversations I'm having with clients every single day, Paul. So spot on with that.
Yeah. And so really what I wanted to understand with it is somebody who's in that situation. Let's help them dig their way out of this.
Yeah.
Where do they go? What do they do?
Yeah, I would say, given what you shared, I think I know the predominant roadblock is the fact that they haven't been trained in these new conversations. And the reason why they haven't been trained in these new conversations is because it's out of every organization's line of vision. Every organization is still metrics driven and result obsessed. Okay. And we can talk about everyone's vision, every company's vision statement and their core values. And I'll always ask companies and leaders, what are you doing to leverage your core values to align with each person's individual values to create a shared goal, a shared vision where everyone is moving towards that from a place of intrinsic motivation, care, and wanting to make an impact. And, you say that's like, I ask my people how they are. Well, that's like making a cold call and saying, how are you today, Mr. or Mrs. Client? That's not doing anything. It's not adding any value to a conversation. So to give you an example, and the conversations that I'm coaching managers on sound more like, hey, you know what, Paul, I know we've been having a lot of meetings about, performance and productivity and making sure we're achieving our, Q1 goals. And I want to just take a pause and just talk about, what's going on in our lives because we haven't had an opportunity to sit down face to face yet. So are you open to having this conversation? So first and foremost, managers have to understand the power of setting positive intent in every conversation. People are so motivated more than ever, unfortunately, by fear and loss rather than the desire of gain and pleasure. And that speaks to where, all roads go back to the manager. Salespeople, their team, they're interacting with their manager every day. Managers speaking with their team every day. The managers working with their people every day, hearing their challenges, hearing their goals. What managers need to realize is that they are the culture. They are the culture of their team, which to me is the good news because they have the power to change it. So some of the questions that managers wouldn't even consider asking would sound something like, so, dear direct report, how are you managing your day? Can I share with you what my calendar looks like? I'd love to see what your calendar looks like. How are you honoring your core values and priorities every day while ensuring you're taking care of your responsibilities at work? How are you setting boundaries between work and life when you're living at home so that, your family knows, hey, this is your family time and this is your work time? How good are you at shutting off at the end of the day to be fully present and engaged with the people around you, your loved ones, your family? And I think that's the one that everyone struggles with more than anything, is that power of being present. And even more so, share with me what I can do, Mr. or Mrs. Direct Report, of how I can be more supportive for you. How often would you like to engage and have these conversations? And one of the most important questions is, how are you taking care of yourself? One thing that I've seen post-pandemic, and even today, is, the one thing that people have thrown out the window, unfortunately, is self-care. And I look at it not just self-care, it's more about extreme self-care. Is how are you taking care of yourself, personally, professionally, physically, spiritually, emotionally? How are you taking care of your whole self? And this constant pressure that we're feeling to perform work is really overshadowing the ability for us to start taking care of ourselves better.
Yeah. I have a few people in mind as I'm listening to you, thinking about how does this apply to them? And it begs the question, which I'll come back to, is are we selecting the right people in the first place for that role? Because we take somebody whose job in sales is to go out and only look after themselves. Okay, they've got a customer, I get it, but essentially they're looking after themselves. And now we put them into a position where it's a completely different set of skills, which you'll have seen a million times. It's part of your business. But then I also wonder, like, I have a couple of people in mind. One approached me recently to help him because he said, Paul, I don't have the headspace to deal with these. He had 3 reps, all very different roles, very different personalities. And he was just throwing his hands up in the air. I don't have the headspace. Now, he's in a role he doesn't report to anybody. He's the CEO. It's just not a huge company, but which begs the question also, who's coaching the coaches? And then there's another one I have in mind, and it would be exhausting working for her. She's just all over the place. It's like everything is urgent, and I can't imagine her recognizing the need to coach, or if it were, it would be all about the opportunities and the pipeline and the deal and nothing about the individuals. And I just don't know where to start with it, because I just wonder, they have to hit some sort of a rock bottom to kind of come to that realization that you're asking brilliant questions about, how you're looking after yourself, what about your family? But so many I see, they're just not even that place. They don't see it. It's like there's this cloud. Talk to me. I know I'm throwing a lot at you.
No, and that cloud is just this fog of this result driven, metrics driven, data driven culture that every company struggles with. Every company, every salesperson. Let's face it, they have targets on their back. Okay, they have goals to achieve. So unfortunately, because of that, they're always focused on what's next and not what's now. So now let's take that to your point about almost this blind spot that managers have, where they're not recognizing the coaching moment or they're not recognizing the moment where they need coaching. And the reason why is very simple, is that if managers aren't getting the coaching that they need, it's very difficult for them to recognize the needs of others. And, you call it headspace, and I love that. And you said it earlier, how managers say, well, I don't have time to coach. Once I hear that, I know they have no clue what coaching is. And I'll take it to a higher level here. Is, senior VPs have a meeting with their managers and they say, listen, coaching is the way to go. Maybe they read an article about it or something, coaching, this is what we have to do. So I want you guys to coach your people 70% of the time. And the managers looking at each other after this.
I know.
Okay, A, I had no idea what you're talking about, Mr. and Mrs. Manager. B, you've never gave me a coaching framework or a universal methodology. So, I guess I'll just, share with people what I did when I was in their role. The challenge is when I hear managers or senior leaders say, I want you to coach your people 70% of the time. That's like telling someone, I want you to breathe 70% of the time, because coaching is not an event. It is not something you do to someone. It is not something that, I'll only coach you if there's a problem. Coaching is a language. Sales is a language. The language of sales and leadership is coaching. So where you and I are working with leaders and salespeople all over the world, their job is tough enough. Our job is to make their life easier. And I try to simplify the concept. Listen, when I'm working with salespeople and managers, I'm teaching them the mindset, but more so the language. How are you showing up in every conversation? What are the words and the questions that are coming out of your mouth? It's sort of like learning a different language, whether it's Urdu or, Italian or German or, any different language. Coaching is a language. And it's not something where it's, to go back to your point about sales process. It's not just step 1, step 2, step 3. I want to know what's under there. What's the meat? So my favorite pet peeve is when I speak to managers and they say, oh yeah, of course we have a sales process, Keith. You mind sending it over to me? And they send me over this beautifully designed, one pager. It's gorgeous, Paul. You want to frame it and you want to put it on the wall. It's so beautiful, right? And it has their steps. And it says, of course, inevitably in every sales strategy and process, there's a discovery step. And I'll see this discovery step in their sales process. And I'll ask their salespeople, and especially their manager, and I'll say, I'm curious, I see you have this step in there, and we all know that's really important to uncover the needs and challenges and pain points, desires, blind spots of our customers and prospects, but what questions do you want your people to ask? Well, Keith, it's discovery. They should know how to do that. They know they have to go ahead and ask questions. Oh, okay, and how's that working out for you? Well, actually, we're only at about 70% of quota this quarter. I'm like, I think maybe there's some correlation there, and it's just, again, it's just outside of their line of vision. To your point, they're like so inundated with all this stuff, they don't even have the space to stop, look in the mirror and self-reflect as a leader and say, am I where I want to be as a leader? Am I where I want to be as a coach? Is my team where I want them to be, not only in their own performance, but are they fulfilled? Are they happy? Are they engaged? I was alluding before about departmental silos. The root cause of departmental silos is very simple. It's the fact that we are not respecting other people's agenda. So if I'm in sales, you're in marketing, okay? Inevitably, what do we hear, Paul? We hear, oh, hey, and this goes back to the urgency thing. Hey, I just spoke to a customer today. I need to get this information to them today. I have to send it to them today, Mr. or Mrs. Person in marketing. You got to send it to me today, okay? I need it today. Okay, well, the person in marketing might deliver on it, but what's the exponential cost there? Loss of trust. hey, I don't want to work with this person. They have no respect for my position. We don't realize that everyone has responsibilities, KPIs, commitments, and how they're measured on performance. If people can just stop for a second when they're having to work with marketing or finance or sales or engineering, operations, and say, hey, you know what? Let's take a step back for a second. I probably owe you an apology for coming to you sometimes pretty hard and fast, looking for you to give me something immediately. And I probably haven't given you the time and the respect that your time deserves. I'd love to hit the reset button on our relationship and design it in a way where it's mutually beneficial, where we're collaborating together, and where I can be a resource for you. No one is having those conversations unless I'm coaching them around it.
Yeah.
But imagine the outcome of that. That's when you start developing a holistic, collaborative, improve culture, improving cross-team collaboration, removing silos that really are only meant for farms, and having that opportunity to really work holistically, not individually. And just to wrap this final point up, because it is so critical, is this pressure to deliver. I will challenge every manager and every salesperson. Who's putting the pressure on you? Well, it's the customer. Really? Is that what they said? Did the customer say at the end of the call, hey, I need you to get this to me today? Well, Keith, now that you say it that way, no, but I'm assuming, if I don't get it to them today, if I don't get that proposal out and sacrifice my personal life tomorrow, if I don't get that proposal out tomorrow and it's becoming a cost, customer is going to go to a competitor. I'm going to lose their trust. They're not going to think I'm responsive. That is all about the salesperson. That are all the costly assumptions they're making, and it's counterintuitive, but salespeople and managers are putting the pressure on themselves. It's not coming from the customer. And I would challenge every salesperson in the next conversation they're having with a prospect, at the end of that conversation, when there is a next step, of course, and there is a go-do, which we all have to have, and when the customer and the salesperson establishes the fact that, hey, I need to get you, pricing guide, a quote, a proposal, Mr. or Mrs. Prospect, when is the latest I can deliver this to you by? Well, actually, I'm traveling over the next week, so I'm going to be gone for a week. Okay. So, when you come back, I guess, let's see, today's Wednesday. So you're coming back next Wednesday. When would be a good time for us to reconnect and discuss this? Well, Keith, actually, I'm going to need a few extra days because I need to then meet with my stakeholders who are also going to be part of this decision-making process. Oh, great. And when is that meeting happening? Well, that meeting's happening the week later. So for me, what I'm hearing is, well, number one, I have about 7 days to deliver this proposal. And then after that, rather than wondering where my prospect went, if they went MIA, no, they already told me they're having another meeting with their stakeholders the following week, a few days later. So what am I going to do next? Well, now that you know when you're having that next meeting to review our proposal, Mr. or Mrs. Prospect, let's put something on the calendar for us to discuss and reconnect.
Makes sense.
But to your point, when you're reacting, you're coming from a place of constantly working from the past. We need to be responding, over-responding, not to be reactive, so we could be a choice.
I'd love to give you an example of something I heard recently, which actually when I heard it, I thought, I must tell Keith that. So I was just meeting up with a guy I know for a cup of coffee. I hadn't seen him in a while. And he was telling me that maybe a year or two ago, he was in a role and he was struggling. And his boss came to him and said, he says, this is his coaching question, and are you trying? To which the rep goes, yeah, I am. And his boss says, well, that's all I can ask.
Gosh, I hope millions of people watch this.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. Most managers I've met truly, authentically care. They do care about their people. They care about their customers. Salespeople truly care about their customers. They want to deliver value. We just don't know how.
Now, something interesting that he shared with me, and I thought as well that there's two sides to this, because he did say to me that faith that the manager had shown him, basically saying, well, that's all I can ask, made him want to work harder. So I don't discount the faith. There's other ways of expressing it. Look, I have ultimate faith in you. Maybe it might be an idea, maybe if you sat down. That was the bit that was missing, not the expression of faith, because that's a good place to start. But then he said, well, can I help you lift it? That was what was missing. Anyway, what I'd love to do,
I got to build off that one, because one of my and I try, and it's a challenge for managers, because they're so directive and they're so focused on their agenda that what they don't realize, and this is the main reason why people don't want to be coached, is because they're feeling like they're being manipulated. So, for example, what would a manager say to a salesperson? So, let's talk about this. Let's do a pipeline review. Okay. Then we're talking about one deal. Don't you think it would be a good idea to call the customer and get them on the phone with the engineer and the CTO and have a conversation with them? And the salesperson sitting there and thinking, hey, boss, I just came up with this great idea that maybe I should call, the CTO and the account manager and get them on the call. I'm so glad I thought of that. No. You just Jedi mind trick them. That's called manipulation. So do you think there's an opportunity for you to improve your performance? Yes. I mean, these are loaded, leading questions that dilute the impact, integrity of coaching.
The one I think is really disingenuous is, what do you need from me? And I'll tell you why, because I have found myself, when I say that, if I'm being honest, I'm hoping you'll say nothing. It's almost like, don't let the door hit you on the way out. It's rather than kind of having that discussion about, okay, tell me how I can help. And I just have opened a conversation in terms of, what's your proposed first step, and just helping them do that rather than just, what do you need from me? It's almost like, you see it at the bottom sometimes, a call to action on email is, don't hesitate to contact me if you have any questions. To me, it's analogous to that. And I just think it's not helpful. Anyway,
I know you bring up something, because let's give our listeners here something they can put their hands around. And I call it my 60-second coaching strategy. Actually, and being from New York, I talk fast, and I'm going to talk really slow. It's actually 30 seconds. But when managers say they don't have time to coach, that's like saying, again, they have time to put out fires, and they have time to be the chief problem solver and do their people's job, but they don't have time to coach. Time is the only constant. Choose a path, Mr. and Mrs. Manager. You want to go down this path? Be the chief problem solver, solve everyone's problems, develop an entire team of dependent people waiting for you? Or do you want to build a team of autonomous, accountable top performers because you've empowered them to self-select, come up with their own solutions, build their confidence and problem-solving skills? It's a rhetorical question. So how simple is it to just say to someone when they're looking for help, say, hey, listen, Paul, I'm happy to give you my opinion because that's what they want. However, you're much closer to this than I am. And I trust you and I trust your judgment. So what's your opinion on how to handle this? People can do that all day long. Managers can do that all day long, because it's seeking to understand the other person's point of view before dumping yours on them. And if you have time to give an answer, you have time to ask a question.
I wonder how much organizational culture gets in the way as well, because I always remember a story from same company where you and I first met many years ago. and there was a guy, and his full-time job was a coach. Now, it was a sales coach, right? So it was a particular methodology that they
I
used.
even know what you're talking about, but we won't use any names here.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the guy I'm thinking of probably worked for that person that you're thinking of, because this guy, he'd then been given a job. First of all, it was interesting. He had been promoted to a sales manager from coach. Just even in the language of that alone tells you an awful lot about their culture. And I met him maybe 6 months after he got this job as manager, and met him getting into the lift one day. And I said, so, hey, I call him Bob. Hey, Bob, I said, how's the coaching going? And he laughed and he says, what coaching, Paul? He says, all I do is put out fires. And those fires, I mean, like, he was a believer in coaching. Many people aren't, but he was a believer. And it was the culture of that organization that just dropped all of these fires. Need this, do this, do this. And genuinely, he wasn't able to manage all of that. So what's he going to drop? The thing that isn't squeaky, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. Well, the quiet one doesn't get the oil. And of course, the reps are not putting their hands up going, coach me, coach me, coach me. So, yeah, I think that can be an issue for sure. But what I'd love to do with you, Keith, is maybe, because we talked a little bit of what coaching is. You talked about it being a language, and I'd love to expand on that first of all and talk about, well, I think intent is important, that you have to have the right intent, you have the right supporting culture, you have to have the skill sets, all of those things. But then also to say, well, what are the triggers? What tells me I have a problem that coaching is the solution to? And then maybe we could finish that out with maybe some logical steps that people can put in. Where do they go? What do they do?
Sure.
Pick up the phone, call you is a good step. But if they're trying to get their head around it first, even before they do that, what could they do? Now, before we go there, there's something I have to ask you, because you talked about... Sorry, I'm going to embarrass you now. And just for people who are listening to not watching it, I'll try to give you a visual. Because a few moments, you talked about self-care. And then you were doing this, you were putting your hands up in the air, and I thought, my God, look at those guns. That guy spends a serious amount of time working out. And Van Damme would be proud of those guns.
I'd hope it would be the 50-year-old Van Damme, not the 70-year-old Van Damme. Hey, listen, what kind of coach would I be if we didn't walk our talk? There
you go.
To me, the best coaches are the ones where you are taking people to where they want to be, but the best coaches have been there. The best coaches are the ones that are modeling what's possible for others to achieve. And, I lost count how many times clients have said to me, Keith, I want your job. And next thing I know, we're transitioning for them to be a coach. There's something, though, you said earlier that I don't want to step over. And it really comes down to this immense amount of pressure that managers...
There's those guns again.
Yeah, you have to flex. Okay, you have to flex.
All right, sorry. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. Listen, at least I'm getting some accolades here, because 27 years of marriage, you're not getting that much anymore. So I'll take what I can get. Okay, Paul? Managers need to understand that they need to push back. They need to push back, because if no one's pushing back, then the avalanche is going to continue going downhill. It is the manager's responsibility to also insulate their people from the pressure from the top. And they don't often do that, because they feel it, and then it goes back down to their team. And managers, we're living in a world where we have so much more opportunity to try different things within organizations. And we get mired again with the redundancies of all these past years of just, well, that's just how things are. Best managers I see, they're pushing back. They're pushing back with their boss. They're pushing back with certain initiatives. And guess what? Those are the best managers in the company. They're the ones that rise and make the impact that people need, because they're the ones that are saying, you know what? I need to push back on this, because what's going to be best for our people and for our customers? And that's the question that managers need to ask, because they ask themselves the wrong question every morning when they wake up. They ask themselves, well, gee, what do I need to do today to hit my quota? What do I need to do to hit my business objectives? It's the wrong question. The question managers need to ask themselves every morning is, what do I need to do today that will make my people more valuable than they were yesterday? That's the growth mindset. That to me is the transformation that every leader needs to go through, because if they're not changing how they think, they're certainly not going to change how they do things.
When you say more valuable than they were yesterday, valuable in what sense?
Thank you for that clarifying question. Valuable in the sense of who they are, valuable in the sense of uncovering their core values and are they living their values, valuable in the sense of, are you showing up as the best salesperson that you can be? Valuable in the sense of, what are your customers saying about you? Are you a value add? If you're an account manager, are you just showing up and throwing up the new latest strategies and technologies and features and benefits? Or are you actually taking a step back and seeking to understand where that person is and surrendering your agenda and really making it about the other person? The pressure we're feeling, unfortunately, comes at another cost, which is because we have this target on our back, we're making it all about us. So salespeople are thinking, okay, I have to close this deal. Okay, I need to get the next appointment. So there they are on a call, and they're having a conversation with a prospect, and their internal narrative that's going on in the background is, okay, I got to get this. I got to get this next meeting. I got to move this to the next phase of my sales process. I can't mess this up. I need to close this deal. I need to hit my quota, make some money. I. We can all agree that the sales process is about the customer, but in reality, salespeople are making it about them, what they have to gain and what they have to lose, rather than, again, making, just like we managers to make their people more valuable, we have to make our customers more valuable every day.
Yeah. I heard Dave Matson once describe that. He worked with David Sandler, and he talked about the 3 Ps, which what you said reminded me of. That was the protection, permission, and potency. That was the coaching relationship.
I'm curious.
Protection.
Well, I have a question for you. How often have you, and I know you and I have been around the block many times, how often have you had a conversation with managers and asked them, when was the last time you had a conversation with one of your employees to uncover their sense of purpose? You'll hear a lot of silence after that one, right?
Yep, for sure.
And again, we can say it's important, but it's not just saying it. It's okay. We gotta have that conversation to uncover, what does that look like? You said before, what can we do to give people something tactical they can use? I shared with you, my 30-second coaching strategy. But what do the conversations sound like to uncover people's motivations? You know as well as I do, most managers will just assume what people are motivated by. And typically what they wind up doing is managing in their own image. Well, I was motivated by money, so I guess all my salespeople must be coin operated as well. No, that's not the case. As a matter of fact, if anyone is going to do any research after this session, go look and see what the top intrinsic motivators are today in the workforce. It's not money. It's recognition,
absolutely not.
Right?
For sure.
It's wanting to make a difference. It's collaboration. It's contribution. It's impact. It's life balance. It's happiness. Those are the things that people want most today. That's what people are looking for. Money is great. And listen, we all need to make a living and take care of ourselves and our family and our community. But it's not the driving factor. It's like, I can't wait to wake up this morning and make money. No, to me, I wake up every morning and I'm like, I can't wait to have a conversation with Paul. I can't wait to make an impact today. I always say managers, you and I, they have the same job as us, Paul. They just don't get it. We have a practice. They have a practice. Their practice is their team. What's our role? To make our clients more valuable, more effective, and more successful. What's a manager's role? To make their people more effective, more successful, more valuable. We have the same job. I think we have the best job in the world. My point is this: if managers are not coaching and coming from that place, they're not going to be waking up every morning and with a smile on their face, enjoying their job.
I wonder how much of it. You see, it's hard to wake up thinking about your team when your boss is piling a whole ton of pressure on you. That's one. And two, I wonder how many are just uncomfortable or don't know how to have those conversations about the purpose of the people in their team. It's easy to have a conversation around an opportunity, right? That's so. If I'm given two options, one to have that conversation versus one that might make me feel uncomfortable, or maybe I'm worried that, if I talk to about their purpose, that they'll discover it's not working here, and then they'll disappear off, and now I have another headache. Yeah. So, yeah.
I actually love those assumptions that I get to call managers out, because that's all they are. Well, Keith, what if they react negatively? Well, people always go to the negative assumption, right? Because most assumptions are negative. And they say, Keith, I can't use that question. I can't coach up, because that's what you were alluding to. I can't coach up to my boss and share with them how I like to be managed and motivated and held accountable, because, who am I to do that? I'm going to get lambasted on that one. Well, I can't. And my reaction is very simple. Have you tried again? And inevitably, the answer is, well, no, but I'm assuming. No. Let's not play around in assumption world, okay? Let's look at what every person needs. Just like managers need to go to their team and ask how they want to be supported and led and coached, we need to coach up and do the same. Again, that could be a blind spot for senior leadership. If they're not getting good coaching, it's difficult for them to give it.
Yeah. No, for sure. Conscious of time, can we spend some time on the triggers and then maybe give people a sense of what are some of those first steps if they were to explore this? The 19 out of 20 who have not been coached, but maybe listening to this conversation, maybe just spending time with their team, feel that, let's explore this. No commitment, but let's explore it. Talk to me about that.
Well, I mean, you use the language, and I love that word, explore. It's, hey, and even opportunities. You mentioned before, aligning, there's sales opportunities, but what about the opportunities to make our people, more effective every day? Well, what if we can contribute to their quality of life? I said earlier, managers do care. They care deeply. It doesn't mean they don't know how to. It doesn't mean they know how to demonstrate it, and it doesn't mean they know how to instill that into the hearts and minds of their people. And where you were sharing before about, well, maybe they're just uncomfortable having those conversations. It's always about setting positive intent. If I walk up to one of my employees and just start asking questions without them knowing what my intention is, I'm going to freak them out. Because the human condition, unfortunately, is when intentions are unclear, people default to fear. But if I share with one of my employees and say, hey, I would love to explore with you some opportunities where I can best support you, not only at work, but also outside of work, so that you're creating not only the career you love, but it's aligned with your, priorities in your life as well. And actually taking the time to ask those questions. What does a great day look like for you? What are the values that you want to make sure you express every day? What are the things that move you outside of your integrity? What does integrity look like for you? How do you like to be motivated? Simple questions like that, to actually take an hour of our time with each person on our team. No manager can say they don't have time for that, because the exponential value is going to be greater productivity and a top performing team. And this is not something, by the way, you do once and you're done. People's lives change at such a rapid pace today. We need to have these conversations about what is most important to them. I would say not once a year, and not when they're being interviewed or during onboarding, but maybe 3 or 4 times a year. Because, you mentioned earlier, and unfortunately, my dad passed away 2 years ago, and he was my best friend, my soulmate, and my mentor. It was a shocking loss, and no one expected it. And so here I am now. My mom's still alive, thank God, and taking care of her and spending time with her. And I'm thinking of the conversations I'm having over and over again with some of my clients about my clients are showing up and now saying, "Hey, Keith, how's your mom doing?" First thing they're asking me, "How's your mom doing?" Because those are the type of relationships I want with my clients, with my friends, with my family. And I would think that's what everyone would want, to have that level of connection with the people they're working with as well.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. So in terms that's a really, really good insight into intent and purpose and vision for what it should be like. It's a fine line, obviously, between caring and trying to be people's friend. You're not saying that. I can hear people kind of go, yeah, but but my employees are not my best friends, right? I have friends. I don't need more, and I can understand that, but that doesn't stop you caring.
Caring is simply a core value. I mean, some of my, and just to make sure we're being clear, a core value to me is who you are that makes you whole and fully expressed as a human being. So when I am living my core values, that means I'm making an impact, which I certainly hope we're doing in this conversation. Family, love, connection, extreme self-care, music. That'll be another hour if we get on that topic. Friendship, travel, culture, religion. These are the things that I embrace because they make me who I am, and it makes me feel I'm being the best version of me that I can be. And that's why managers need to have these conversations with their team, but even more important, before they can have their conversation with their team, they need to have it with themselves. They need to have it with their coach. They need to have it with their manager. Because, again, we are modeling what is possible for others to achieve.
Tell me a story about somebody you coached, or maybe it's a manager you had trained or coached, and something they shared with you about something that they put in place, so like a turnaround story. Somebody who might have been struggling, and then because the coach put some simple steps in place, made a big difference.
What a great question to start wrapping up with. Now, I am not going on a rant and talk about the infamous performance improvement plan. I am not going to go on a rant and talk about the PIP, okay, which quite frankly I look as the POP, the pushing out plan.
Yes.
I mean, let's face it, it's not meant to really demonstrate care and support. It's meant to protect the company and be compliant with HR, okay? And when I have what I'm about to share with you, a certain strategy to turn around underperformers, I'm always looking at HR in the corner and making sure they're not quivering and saying, Keith, that's not compliant. You can't do that. What I would suggest, and again, statistics are showing more and more, a shocker to me. I've been preaching this for years. The PIP doesn't work. Historically, it does not work. And when people say it works, I challenge them and I'll hear, well, it works about 20% of the time. And then I'll say, when the person turns around, do they maintain their performance? Oh no, Keith, they revert back to their old habits and then will wind up having to leave or get fired anyway. So technically, it just doesn't work. Now think about what type of environment you're creating amongst your team. Because we all know what people talk, right? So look at my boss, they just threw that person under the bus just because they're not performing it. They didn't even want to help them. Is that the legacy that a leader wants to create for themselves? Or is it the legacy is, hey, you know what? That's the manager who demonstrated unconditional support. And one of the stories is working with a manager, and they were dealing with an underperformer. And of course, they're looking around to see what tools do I have to help support this person. And of course, that's the tool that they have. But what about they create something else? Well, what about and I share with this manager, you create a turnaround strategy. It's not HR compliant. It's an organic strategy. It's an organic strategy that you and that underperformer might be, will create. And it looks like, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Underperformer, what I want for you is to achieve the success you want. And I have an idea. How about you and I work together for 4 weeks straight? Make sure we meet every week to support you around what you need to achieve. Okay. We'll set some measurable parameters, some goals to achieve. Okay. Some results to achieve. Now, side note, we know that some companies have a much longer sales cycle than 4 weeks. However, there's a lot more things you could also measure to see evidence of change, not just a sale. So when the manager shares this, hey, let's kind of create this path of success, things that you need to achieve, and we'll meet every week, and I'm going to be there to support you and check in with you, throughout the week to make sure that I'm going to be the resource you need. And the salesperson agrees. Now, the salesperson, of course, what people create, they own. What they own, they act on. Salesperson creates a few things that they're willing to commit to the following week. Well, the following week comes by, and one of 4 things are going to happen, Paul. Number 1, they honored their commitment. Number 2, they honored part of their commitment. Number 3, they didn't honor any of their commitments. Or number 4, they didn't show up for the meeting. Now, let's now look at this from week 1, week 2, week 3. Here we are at week 4. The same 4 things are going to happen. Well, if after 4 weeks straight, the person chose not to honor their commitments, I didn't choose that not to honor their commitments. It wasn't on me. They made the commitment, and they made a conscious choice not to honor it. 4 weeks straight. Is something magical going to happen on the 5th week? No. This is about collecting evidence of change, not dealing with an underperformer for 3 months or 4 months or 6 months or 8 months, thinking, oh, I know they can turn it around. I know they have it in them, and we're being seduced by their potential. We're collecting evidence of change. We're collecting certainty. So now, and our managers love to hear this, you will never have to fire anyone again. People are either going to self-select in or out. They're choosing to honor their commitments or not. They're choosing to want to succeed in this turnaround strategy or not. And I'm demonstrating my unconditional support as a leader so I can look in the mirror and say, you know what? I've truly given this person the time, the space, the unconditional support. They fired themselves, or conversely, they honored all of their commitments. Congratulate you, congratulate them. That's a successful turnaround. Guess what you avoided? The pivot. So that's, to me, is what people would embrace, because now it's not just about the team. It's not just about the results. It's not just about coaching. It's about looking at yourself and asking, what's the legacy that I want to leave? How do I want to be remembered? The choices we've made in the past have created our brand and our legacy today. The choices we make today will create the brand and legacy we want tomorrow. And the great news is that's in our power of how we want to be known and how we want to show up to the world.
Yeah. That's a perfect place to end it. I just love that. So I'd like to ask you this, Keith. Last time I spoke to you, behind you on a wall, it was a darker wall than that, but it was right behind you, and it was festooned with tickets from concerts you'd been to. A, do you still have the wall? And B, tell me about the concert that you've been to since then that you've enjoyed the most.
Okay, well, I've had a really good run of concerts this summer. So let's go back to the first question. I feel very blessed that I was able to build my dream house, and there was an old detached garage that was built in 1929. That if I tore it down, I wouldn't be able to build anything because it was grandfathered in. I converted that into a music studio. So it's called the Farmhouse, based on one of my best bands, Dish. So that's it just came off, by the way, a 3-run night in Bethel Woods. So that was the last 3 concerts I saw, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. One of the most beautiful places I've ever seen a concert. Right before that, I saw Green Day. Right before that, I saw Dave Matthews. Right before that, I saw Michael Frente. Right before that, I saw Mo. And next week, I'm going with my wife to see James Taylor. So I think that's a pretty solid.
That's a pretty good run.
And to answer your first question, yes, I still have all my concert tickets. They're hanging in my studio now. And I invite all of our viewers here, if whether you sing, whether you play an instrument, whether you play the spoons or the drum, it's a non-judgment place. I invite everyone to come over and just be part of it. And just because music to me is the language of the soul, it's the universal language that brings everyone together. And I always put out an invitation to people to come and visit. Text me, email me. My email is...
it's all right, I'll put your address coming up on the screen. So two other questions then on that is favorite concert ever, or maybe say most memorable concert ever, and favorite place, venue.
Well, favorite venue, interestingly, is 15 minutes away from me, which is Jones Beach Theater. It's the entire theater is literally in the water. It's gorgeous outside, and it's about only 14,000 people. Just really great environment where I'm seeing actually James Taylor next week. And favorite concert, I can't answer that because every concert to me is, and I guess it's just how I look at things being a musician myself and playing guitar, is to me, my favorite concerts, I can answer it this way, are the ones where I'm watching the band have fun. Because if they're just going through the motions, that's the energy they're exuding. And when you look at a band like, again, with Fish, and it's a jam band, Green Day, which are two total antithesis of styles of music, which gives you an indication of how much I love. They are having so much fun on stage, bringing people up on Michael Frente, the same thing. Bringing people from the audience on stage, connecting with the audience, walking into the stands. You see that, and it's like they're having fun, and it's just like leadership, right? I mean, what we put out, what we radiate, is what we attract. And when you're seeing these performers authentically having fun and giving their gift of music, to me, man, that's going to be always one of the greatest experiences of my life, regardless of the type of music.
So that's a no to AI music then.
No comment.
Yeah. I'd imagine if you're writing music and you wanted some ideas or just some inspiration, just something to generate, I think there's something there, but it's not about the music. It's about as you said, it's about the connection.
Yeah, that's right. It's the connection that these performers have with their audience. And I'm talking about bands that have been around for 30 years. Green Day's been around, believe it or not, 30 years since they released Dookie. Fish has been around longer. Dave Matthews has been around longer. And there's a reason, by the way, these bands are still touring. To your point, and I'm not going to talk about the state of affair of music today, right? But that word connection, imagine if we can take that experience and bring that into the workplace.
Yeah.
And why can't
one band you've never seen that you would give, and you could only go to one more concert, this would be it? Who would it be? They could be past or present.
Well, past or present. What shows up for me would probably be the bands I haven't. It's probably the Beatles, and just because I'm a guitarist, Jimi Hendrix, the Doors, and today, there's such good music out there today. I again, having taken a road trip with my friends to see the shows, I walk home with like a list of all new bands. Oh, you have to listen to this band. You have to listen to this band. You have to listen to Goose. You have to listen to, whatever the bands are sharing with me, I'm like, I haven't even heard of these bands. But, to me, music is the universal connection. And I'm not saying for managers to show up at the next meeting with a mic and a, guitar in hand and ready to jam, which could be a great idea. But to bring that concept back to their team. And what are we really talking about? Authenticity, individuality, connection, trust, transparency, making it an indelible impact. I don't know what I had for breakfast 2 days ago, Paul, but I can remember every concert I've been to, and I have literally been, we're up there in the, 3 zeros range, thousands of concerts, and every one, it's musicians give a gift to their people. And I guess we can continue to correlate. Maybe this is an article I need to write now, Paul, the correlation between music and leadership, and because there is such a correlation, and they give the gift of their music and leaders give the gift of who they are. And so.
You've never seen Rory Gallagher?
No, I got to write that down.
Do you know who I'm talking about? Oh my Lord. All right. Yeah. You're going to thank me later.
I look forward to it.
He's long since dead, unfortunately. He died very, very young, drug overdose. But just an incredibly... these reaction videos that are on YouTube, you'll see people and somebody will send them, listen to this, and they react to it live. They listen to it, and you just watch any of those reaction videos and their jaws are hitting the table when they listen to Rory Gallagher. So I'll send you a link afterwards.
That's actually
if you're Googling, look up Bad Penny.
Okay, and send that to me. And actually, that's how I felt after watching Eddie Van Halen play guitar. Yeah. My jaw was to the floor.
Yeah. Listen, man, it was absolute pleasure catching up with you again.
Always.
I really appreciate your sharing your insights, and valuable as always. Thank you, Keith.
Hey, thanks for pulling out of me, Paul. Thank you for who you are and the great work you're doing. And listen, if anyone wants to reach out, whether they want to jam at the farmhouse or get some really great resources and I have some free online trainings on coaching and sales, just reach out to me. My mobile number is 516-231-2774. And I know people are like, no way, he just gave his cell phone out. I'm checking right now. Yes, it's my real cell phone number. My email is simple, keithr@keithrosen.com. I'm here as a resource for you. People are out there struggling. They don't know which way to turn. Please know that for those who are watching, let me be your coach for life, okay? Everyone does better when they have someone in their corner. So
I love it.
On that note, Paul, deeply appreciate you, and thanks again for having me.
My great pleasure. Thank you, Keith.
Cheers.